Have you ever done something and then wondered, why did I just do that? You're not alone. This happens to a lot of us, and it's exactly what the book Blindspots, Why We Fail to Do What's Right and What to Do About It, by MaxHBazerman and AnnETenbrunsel looks into. This book helps us understand why sometimes there's a difference between what we plan to do and what we actually end up doing. It's all about the small choices we make every day, where sometimes we slip up without even knowing it. That is why I think this summary will be super useful for you. It's not just about knowing what's ethical, it's about aligning what we believe with what we actually do. If you've ever felt puzzled by your own actions or regretted a decision right after making it, this book's summary might just have the quick answers you're looking for. Feel free to like and subscribe as I break down the chapters of this book into key highlights and lessons with clear examples. Starting from the first chapter of Blindspots is titled The Gap Between Intended and Actual Ethical Behavior. So, we all like to think of ourselves as good people, right? But sometimes, what we end up doing doesn't quite match up with our intentions. The authors call this the intended actual ethical behavior gap. It's like planning to diet and then eating a whole chocolate cake. This gap isn't just about making a bad choice. It's often because we don't even see the ethical decision in front of us. It's hidden by our biases, pressures, or even the environment we're in. Imagine you're at work and you notice a small mistake in the accounting. It's minor and correcting. It could mean trouble for a colleague. Often, our brain convinces us it's not a big deal. But this is where the gap widens, the difference between doing what's right and just sliding along. So how do we bridge this gap? The first step is awareness. Recognizing that this gap exists and understanding our own tendencies to overlook it can help us start making changes. If we want to act more ethically, we need to first understand and recognize the gaps in our behavior. By becoming aware of these blind spots, we can start to align our actions with our ethical beliefs. Let's not be the person who intends to diet but ends up eating the cake. Let's be the one who sees the cake, acknowledges the temptation, and chooses a healthier snack instead. Chapter 2 of Blindspots is titled, Why Traditional Approaches to Ethics Won't Save You. When we think of ethics training, what comes to mind? Probably a classroom or maybe an online course, right? These settings typically focus on rules and regulations, aiming to guide our ethical decisions. But here's a twist. The authors argue that knowing the rules doesn't necessarily mean we'll follow them, especially when real life situations get complex. It turns out, knowing what's right isn't the same as doing what's right. If we really want to act ethically, we need more than just rules. We need to understand the psychological factors that influence our decisions. It's about preparing ourselves, not just intellectually, but emotionally for the ethical dilemmas we'll face. Chapter 3 of Blindspots is titled, When We Act Against Our Own Ethical Values. We all have moments when we do things that don't align with our values. But why? It's not just about making poor choices. Sometimes our environment and social circles can steer us wrong. For example, imagine you're part of a team that casually ignores rules to meet targets. Even if you know it's wrong, the pressure to conform can be powerful, pushing you to act against what you believe. Say you're in a situation where everyone around you is taking a shortcut that isn't exactly safe or right. It's easy to go along just to fit in, right? But here's the catch. Each time we conform, we stray a little further from our own ethical compass. The tricky part is recognizing when we're being pulled away from our values. Awareness is the key. Once we see these influences, we can start making decisions that better align with our ethics. In conclusion, it's not just about knowing what's right. It's also about being mindful of the pressures that might lead us astray. By staying alert to these influences, we can choose actions that reflect our true selves. Chapter 4 of Blindspots is titled, Why You Aren't As Ethical as You Think You Are. It's easy to view ourselves in a positive light. We often believe we're more ethical than we actually are. This self-deception can lead to a big gap between our perceived and actual behaviors. Imagine this. You might judge someone harshly for taking office supplies home, but what about when you do it? Sometimes, it's easy to justify our small, unethical acts while condemning others for the same actions. Or consider a scenario where you bend the rules to meet a personal goal. It's just a little tweak, right? But these little tweaks add up, distorting our ethical self-image over time. The key is self-awareness. By understanding that we are prone to self-deception, we can start to align our actions more closely with our ethical ideals. In conclusion, the truth is, we might not be as ethical as we believe, but recognizing this can be the first step towards genuine ethical behavior. It's about aligning our actions with our true ethical standards, not just the ones we think we uphold. Chapter 5 of Blind Spots is titled When We Ignore Unethical Behavior. Have you ever seen someone litter and just walk past without saying anything? Or maybe a coworker skips a rule and everyone pretends not to notice? It happens more often than you might think. Why do we do this? Well, it's often about avoiding conflict or discomfort. Speaking up can be hard, especially when it might disturb the peace or our relationships. Imagine you know a friend has exaggerated their qualifications on a resume. It's easier to ignore it than confront them, right? But every time we choose silence, we're indirectly saying that unethical behavior is okay. However, taking a stand can start with small steps. Acknowledging the problem internally is the first move. Then, if possible, discussing it in a safe environment can begin to change the norm. Therefore, by choosing not to ignore unethical acts, we set a new standard for behavior around us. It's about being the change we want to see even in small ways. Let's not be bystanders to unethical actions. Chapter 6 of Blind Spots is placing false hope in the ethical organization. Many of us believe that if we work for an organization that claims to value ethics, then unethical behaviors won't occur. But is that really the case? Organizations often promote their ethical standards and have codes of conduct plastered on walls. However, despite these outward signs, unethical decisions can still happen within. It's like having a beautiful facade on a building that's falling apart inside. Imagine a company that overlooks small ethical breaches because they're profitable. This behavior can set a precedent, subtly encouraging employees to prioritize profit over ethics, even if that's not written in any rulebook. The gap between an organization's stated values and its actual practices can be wide. So, relying solely on an organization to guide our ethical behavior might not be enough. Therefore, real change begins with individual actions. While it's great to have organizational support, ethics are lived daily by each of us. In every decision we make, we can't just rely on the organization. We have to be proactive in upholding our values. Chapter 7 is titled, Why We Fail to Fix Our Corrupted Institutions. It's easy to think that if something is broken, especially in big institutions, someone else will fix it. But when everyone thinks that way, guess what? Nothing changes. Often, we see issues in our workplaces or governments that need addressing, but the scale of these problems can be daunting. It's like seeing a leak in a dam and thinking a piece of tape will do nothing to stop the flood. Imagine that you notice that your company often takes financial shortcuts that aren't exactly ethical. Or maybe you see that certain people get preferential treatment when hiring. Speaking up seems risky, and staying silent feels easier. But here's the kicker. Change doesn't need to start with a revolution. It starts when individuals take small, consistent actions. It's about doing what you can where you are with what you have. Therefore, fixing corrupted institutions isn't just a task for the higher-ups, it's on all of us. By stepping up, questioning the status quo, and initiating small changes, we can start to mend the larger system. The final chapter of Blind Spots is titled Narrowing the Gap, Interventions for Improving Ethical Behavior. To start, improving ethical behavior isn't just about wanting to be better. It involves equipping ourselves with the right tools and strategies. Think of these tools like a mirror, a compass, and a map. The mirror helps us see our real selves, not just the version we want to see. The compass guides our decisions, keeping us on the right path. And the map? It helps us navigate complex ethical landscapes. Here's how it works in real life. Imagine you're faced with a tough choice at work. Instead of rushing to a decision, you take a moment to reflect, like looking in that mirror. Maybe you consult with a mentor, using them as your ethical compass. And you discuss options with your team, mapping out the consequences of each choice. But it's not just about individual actions. Organizations can help too, by implementing training sessions, fostering open discussions on ethics, and creating feedback mechanisms that encourage ethical behavior. In conclusion, narrowing the ethical behavior gap is achievable with the right set of tools and a commitment to use them. It's about being proactive, thoughtful, and intentional in our actions. Thanks for watching. If you found this series helpful, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below.